Hi, I'm Rachel Lancaster, and this is the Magnificent Midlife Podcast. This is where we celebrate women in midlife and beyond. We challenge the status quo and bash those negative stereotypes about being an older woman. We're not over the hill at 40, 50, 60. We're just getting started. And the world needs us now more than ever. I'll be talking all things midlife, about the issues that matter, and sharing fabulous stories of amazing women doing very cool stuff. Now's our time. My guest today is the very delightful Kwavi Agbeyegbe, who was on my podcast in the very first season. She's a midlife lifestyle coach, but today we are going to talk about racism, and I am here to learn from this wonderful lady. So welcome, Kwavi. Thank you so much for coming back.
Thank you. I am so excited that you've invited me to speak about this all-important topic. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
It is so important, and I was talking to somebody earlier today and she agreed with me, and I personally feel this might be a turning point, and I'm actually getting quite excited that I hope that it might be.
Yeah, I'm hopeful.
Are you hopeful?
I'm hopeful, but I don't know. And that's just because I'm a hopeful person. I'm really hopeful, and I really hope that there is some change in the works, like major change in the works. I'm not sure, but I'm just hopeful about it.
Now, you have an interesting background, and I think this just enables you to see the issue of racism, particularly against black people, from you're probably one of a kind, aren't you? Because you were born in Nigeria, you then...
No, born in England.
But of Nigerian heritage.
Yes.
And then you moved to the US, and you've been in the US for a long time.
Yeah, so that's okay. So I was born in England. My dad's Nigerian. My mom's from Togo, another country in West Africa. I moved to Nigeria for middle school and high school, and then came back to the UK for college. And after college, I moved to the States. So essentially, I've lived in 3 different countries, but when I add them all up, I've actually spent more of my lifetime in the US.
And just before we hit record, we were talking about how, in a way, that makes your experience of racism slightly different to most American black people.
Yes.
Why is that?
That is true. Well, because, and I'll tell you, and the reason why it is, and I'm going to use my own personal experience as the reason for that. So when I moved to this country, I really didn't know a lot about the history of Americans, Black Americans specifically. I had no idea, really. I just saw what I saw in the pictures. I knew, they were fighting for civil rights, but I didn't really understand the layers underneath that. And I had an episode that happened to me while I was in church. So I grew up as a Catholic, and I lived in Boston at the time, and I'd gone to church. And while in the service, they were passing out the offering plate, and they went right past me. This was in Boston. And I was like, what just happened? So that was my first experience with racism. Because there was no way. And I was the only person in the church. I was the only black person in the church. It was in Boston. And I was like, that was like eye-opening for me. And I'll tell you this, and some listening might disagree with with the decision I made after that. But guess what? After that, I stopped going to church.
I'm not surprised.
I stopped.
I mean, it wasn't exactly very Christian, was it?
No. And then what I did was, and now I'm no longer a Catholic. And I mean, I know my mom's like, oh my goodness, why? But I changed. I mean, I'm still a Christian, but I no longer go to a Catholic church. But that made me think, like, because of the color of my skin. And that put me on this journey of discovering, and I'm not even sure if that was it or there were other things that kind of started from that, but that put me on the journey of learning as much as I could about the history of Black America. Because I'm putting that point, I didn't really understand Jim Crow. I didn't understand what they had gone. I had no idea.
I'm going to ask you, I'm sorry, this is my ignorance. Tell me about Jim Crow.
Yeah. Well, it's all about how the blacks were discriminated against. It's about, the blacks being, they could do, it could be as simple as, they're walking on one side of the street You can't, you couldn't drink from the same water fountain. You had different toilets. I mean, it's like, and then they didn't call them blacks, they called them colored. So it's like coloreds only, you could only do one. So imagine if you are like dying to go to the restroom and the only restroom there is for whites only. I can't even imagine what you do. It's like, I remember watching, what was the movie again? I can't remember the title. There was a movie I watched where something similar happened where they're like, oh, they need to go to the restroom, and it was one of those historical movies. And they couldn't go. I'm like, this is a fundamental human right that you need to go to the restroom, that you need to do certain things. But because of the color of your skin, you're denied that right.
And this was last century
You're denied that
until
right.
very late, wasn't it?
Yeah. So for me, I now had to start reading a lot about what blacks in this country went through. And then I had to go as far back as how it all happened and how they became enslaved and how, they were, sometimes it was even Africans that sold them into slavery. In some cases, they were just found, roaming around and they were captured. But I was like, oh my goodness, I did not know. And how they would actually put them into the boat of how they would be positioned. And they made it so that they could get as many as possible in there, which meant that they really had no room to even move because of the way they had to lay them in. And a lot of them didn't even make it. The few that did, they now had to encounter a totally different life from what they were used to. And I can't even imagine, but I had no idea about that. And I'm African. I didn't know about that. No one teaches you that. And I went on my own journey of reading and rediscovering. And it was at that point that I made the decision that I was no longer, because growing up, everyone knew me as Christy. That was my first name. And Kwavi was actually my middle name. And it was at that point I actually made this decision to change my name. I'm like, you know what? I want to be identified as Kwavi because that is my cultural heritage. And Christy was more of a Christian name that was given to me. So I was like, you know what? I'm done with that. It's on my passport, that's fine, but I want to be identified as Kwavi now because to me that symbolizes who I truly am. And I'll tell you something that was kind of funny when I was, and not funny in the sense, it's kind of strange when you really think back at it. When I would be looking for jobs, I would put, because my name back then before I changed to Kwavi was Christy, and then I would normally shorten it to Chris. So I would have Chris Bello on my resume. And then when I'd apply for jobs, get all these different, because I was in IT at the time, and they'd come back and interview me. They'd call me for an interview, and sometimes they wouldn't talk with me, right? They would just call me in for an interview. And I could see the reaction on their faces as they saw me because they didn't expect, first of all, they were probably expecting a man because it was Chris. And then Bello is also a name that Italians have. So they were like, ooh, okay, this is not what we expected. And you can see it because they couldn't most times they couldn't mask it. But it was kind of interesting. And you know what? I was just like done with that. I'm like, you know what? I'm going to use a name that identifies who I am and a name that I'm way more comfortable with. And that's when I changed my name. So I changed my name in the 90s to Kwavi. Yeah.
But then...
And now I'm Agbeyegbe because of my husband.
And full on African culture.
Right. I'm like, this is who I am. Yeah. I'm not trying to deny any part of who I am. Yeah.
But I mean, you're in Atlanta, aren't you? Which is one of the places where it's been quite difficult. So what's going on and how do you feel about it?
Okay, so Atlanta is a place where, so MLK grew up in Atlanta, so it's a birthplace of civil rights. So they have a lot of that history here. But unfortunately, we still have the same struggles where the police brutality is excessive. And when I say police, I mean across the board. Black, white, Hispanic, across the board. Police brutality against blacks. And so it needs to be addressed. You can't, because you wear a uniform, use excessive force. And I want to say this to the people listening. I'm not saying all of them are, but the few that are, I mean, there needs to be, I don't know if there's special training or what needs to be done, but something needs to be done. You can't just decide that because of someone's a teenager and they're black and they're male, oh, automatically they're doing something wrong. And then even the way you address it is excessive force. They're teenagers. You don't need to use that much force on teenagers, especially when they're not resisting. Some of the videos I've seen recently with regards to the protests, I'm like, I watched the two kids, one from Spelman, one had just graduated from Morehouse, both really young. The way they tased them, broke their car windows just to get them out. I was like, it wasn't necessary. So it's it's been hard. And for me, I'll be honest with you, the last few days have been difficult for me. And I'm a coach, so I've tried my best to kind of self-coach myself. But it's like, I feel like, and I will say this, and most black people will probably agree with me, it's like when we walk around, we already have this burden on us because of how we show, how people perceive us, right? We have this burden. And then with all the happenings recently, it's like you have this extra burden. It's been rough. It's been hard. It has been really difficult for me the last few days. I won't deny that, for sure.
And I've seen online, certainly in our sort of online coaching world, there's been quite a lot of discussion, and there's been a couple of women whose videos I've seen. One was Nicole Walters. I don't know if you've seen her, but also...
No, I haven't.
Hers was a really sort of very emotional, impassioned plea to explain what was going on to her audience, who she described as the lighter brighters. And I looked at a video.
And what does that mean?
I guess it means white people. I don't know. I mean, she talked about her community, her lighter brighters, and she was trying to explain, and she talked about, if you were to replace the word looting with grieving, then you could, look at it very differently in terms of what was actually happening. But then there was another lady, Rachel Rodgers, who...
I know Rachel.
So she was very angry about a certain person's response. I don't know if you've seen that. But
no, I
haven't.
haven't.
It was definitely...
But I know Rachel Rodgers personally. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, it was a really strong and powerful video, and she called out one of our sort of online coaching mentors for this liberal white response.
And what was the liberal white response? Do you know what it was?
Well, basically, this other person said, it's terribly shocking, and I've done an Instagram post. And then she closed down comments in her group.
Okay, so this is the thing, though. When you have a platform, you have an obligation to speak up. And that's one of the things I'm watching now, because I'm seeing some are not making any comments. Some are not making any statements. And I think you have to make a statement. Because if you don't, guess what? A lot of us are going to believe that you agree with what's going on right now. That's just how it's going to be perceived. And when you do, and if you do need to make a statement, speak to others that know. So you don't put out stuff that makes it even worse. Speak to others, because this whole process is education, really. Like the post I put about, color is blind. Well, I'm colorblind. I'm like, I don't see color. You know what? No one should be making that statement anymore. It doesn't work, it's not true, and it is hurtful.
Just by way of explanation for the listeners, that was actually, we're in regular touch on social media anyway, but this was a video that you've made, and you said, however much you may say it with love, when you say that you don't see colour, that means that you don't see me. Because your blackness is part of who you are.
It's part of who I am. So when you don't see that, that means, I only see a part of you. I only see you that you're a female. I don't see that you're black. But that's what you see when you see me. So acknowledge that part of who I am. Acknowledge the experiences that have gone through me because I'm black. Because you're almost discounting all of that. And I know why you're discounting it. It's because it's uncomfortable. But that's where we have to be. We have to be comfortable with being uncomfortable about this topic. That is where we need to get to. A lot of people are coming, I don't want to... You have to talk about it, and you have to be uncomfortable because it's an uncomfortable topic. It's not pretty. It's not.
And I think what white people don't seem able to acknowledge is that now you've got to be proactively anti-racist, and you've got to take a stand, you've got to say things. As you say, if you have a platform, you've got to say something, which is partly why I wanted to talk to you on this podcast, because I want to get this out. And I think a lot of people think, well, they'll just say, well, I'm not racist, but that's no longer enough, is it?
That's not enough. And it's easy to say that. What are your actions? What are you, because really actions speak. What are you doing to make a change? Are you just like, oh, I'm okay? And you know what? That is all part of the white privilege, where you can just sit in your comfortable corner and not do anything and it'll be okay for you. But what about the others? Doesn't it bother you that others can't get a piece of this pie that you have been eating for the past how many years? Doesn't it bother you? And so if it doesn't, that means you're part of the problem. That means you're enjoying this white privilege. Now, the thing is, you can't change your whiteness. You can't change that. That is who you are. But you can use it for good. And I've seen, and listen, this white privilege thing, it runs deep. Because I'll tell you this, there are some statements I'll make that people won't listen to. But a white person will say it, and people will like, oh, and that's all part of the whole white privilege. But you know what? I'm okay if you're going to stand up for us. Even if they don't listen to me, if they'll listen to you, say it. Use it. So use your whiteness for good. You can use it for good.
And if you don't have a platform, what can we do?
Read. Educate yourself. Listen, this book, this is a book I have. The Hate You Give. I don't know if you can see it.
I've
The
heard
Hate You
about
Give.
that one.
They had a movie on this. I went to watch it with my husband and my two boys. Went to go watch it. Listen, that movie allows you to understand the daily struggles that Black people face every single day. As soon as they walk out the door, that is what they experience. That gives you an insight, because it's hard to explain, but this movie does an amazing job. And the book I've heard is even better. That's why I got the book. So I want to read the book.
I'm going to get the book. I am currently reading Me and White Supremacy. Have you heard of that one?
Interesting. No. Interesting.
It's really good. It's
okay. I need to read that.
Well, you probably don't need to read it, because it's specifically for me. It's for white people.
I know, but you know what? It's interesting to read, because and the reason why I read things like that is because I didn't grow up in this country. I like to really understand, like, where is this all coming from? Because for me, it's more historical. Like, why is the whole white privilege, white supremacy, why is it so ingrained in this culture?
See, I remember when I lived in New York, and well, they're still my friends. I have a wonderful family of friends, and their surname is Jones. Of course, it's not their name, is it?
Right.
And it was only eventually that I realised that it wasn't their name. It was the name of whoever had owned their ancestors.
Exactly.
That's in a nutshell, isn't it? That even your name is not yours, and you don't know your heritage. You don't know where you came from, and that's why genetic testing now is so powerful.
It's so popular. It's so popular because they want to know what is my DNA makeup? Where am I actually from? Because I think it's a fundamental right for anyone to know who came before them. Who are, who's part of my heritage?
See, if I'm as a white person, I know that my genetic heritage is European. Right. It was somewhere way back. It is European. It can't really be.
Yeah.
Anyway, back to that book, Me and White Supremacy.
Yes.
It's by Layla F. Saad.
Okay.
And she's a Black Muslim woman, and she grew up in Wales, and she now lives in the Middle East.
Listen, I really need to read that book. Wow. Very interesting background.
It started out as an Instagram challenge. So it was a 28-day Instagram challenge. And basically, every day you have a series of questions that you have to think about and then journal on. And she says, really do the work. And I've just been reading it to try and absorb it all, first of all, before I, get into some of these conversations. But I am going to sit down and I am going to write out my answers to the questions, because one of the things as you go through it, you get to the end of week 1 and it's, white exceptionalism.
I don't even know what that is. See, that's why I need
No,
to
but
read the
white
book.
exceptionalism is exactly me, because I'm reading these things and I'm going, oh, that's not me. Oh, I wouldn't do that. Oh, I wouldn't think that. And then on day 6 or day 7 or whatever it is, she calls you on that and she says, I bet you've been saying that, haven't you? I'm thinking, yep, I have. So it's really powerful stuff. I think
Wow.
every white person should go and read this book, actually.
I like that. And you said it's white. It's called, what's it called?
Called Me and White Supremacy. I'm actually having a book club in my my Facebook group called The Flock.
Oh, cool. Nice. Yeah, I think that's a start, though. Like you said, if you don't have a platform, that is a start, because it's unfortunate, but in order for this to be solved, more white people need to come on
Yes.
board. It's just not going to happen without more white people coming on board. Just not going to happen. You know, so we need you to help us with this.
But it shouldn't be like this, should it? It really shouldn't be.
No,
like
it shouldn't.
Now, I wanted to talk as well. I mean, you've got 2 sons.
Oh, goodness,
And,
yes.
you know, I've heard and read about how black parents teach their children how to keep themselves safe and the sort of things they have to learn at quite a young age.
Right.
So tell me a bit about that.
See, because I know that white parents don't have to go through this. Asian parents don't need to go through this. We have to go through this. Well, you have to tell your son, don't play music too loud. Because the bottom line, you don't want to draw attention to yourself. Teenagers like loud music. That's the norm. But I always have to tell them, like, don't make it too loud. When you go into a store, make sure you're not touching anything that you're not purchasing. When you purchase something, make sure you get a receipt. I heard from a parent when I posted about this a few days on social media. A parent sent me a text. She responded to the post and said, her 12-year-old son in England is scared to go to the shops by himself because he went to the shops once, and as soon as he walked out, the police officer asked him, where's your receipt? He didn't have a receipt. It was a piece of gum. Those are the, I mean, look at that.
I just want to cry, actually. I hear you say
that was
that.
recently. A piece of gum. A piece of gum. I mean, it's just issues like that. Why do I have to explain that to my young boys? But I have to, because I want to make sure they're safe. I want to make sure that when they leave the house that they come back. You know, make sure you have your driver's license with you at all times. I'm sure there are a number of listeners that are listening to this who have left their house without a license. I won't even think too much about it. Not as a black boy. No. You know, make sure you make sure you don't move your hands when the police officer, because in this, I'm not going to tell you about the movie, but he was reaching for something else and he thought it was reaching for a gun. But the presumption is that you're always doing something wrong. That's the problem.
You're guilty until proven
That's
innocent.
the presumption. Yes. You're always thinking that they're doing something wrong.
And why is that? Why is it just, I don't know, is it just that we have to have some sort of scapegoat? Why?
Well, I think it's all about the history. From the times that the blacks were brought into this country, they were treated as, I don't even think second-class citizens are even the case. They were like the bottom of the bottom. And for a lot of people, that is still the image they have. You know, you can't do anything. It's like, no, you're a slave. I own you. You're my property. And for a lot of people, that image is still there. Even though it's changed over the years, that is still their image. So it's like all of a sudden, this person who was considered not really a human being has now risen up and is participating in life like you are. And it's like, not quite. You know, it's just still. And then unfortunately, because we didn't have it wasn't equal footing. So we've had to struggle a lot more, a lot harder. And there's a lot, even in terms of funding and everything, it's just not the same in white neighborhoods as black neighborhoods. And even when it's common knowledge, white flight. You know what white flight is? When blacks move into a nice neighborhood, the white people leave. So there's always something going on, always something going on. It's like we try to move up a little bit and then something is like, okay, no, you can't have that. Constantly. And there are people that hold on to that. And I think also too, I think a lot of white people feel that if we get the same opportunities that they have, they'll lose theirs. I don't know why they think that.
No, it's like
That's it.
people realize. I think parents realize, don't they, that well, technically, if you have enough love for all your children, your children doesn't get diluted. If you have another child, and yet why would your opportunities go away if other people?
Oh no, I really believe that the core of all of this is white people feel that they will lose out if black people have more than, if people get more opportunities. I really feel that. Because to me, it's all about your access to whatever it is. We don't get the same access. And it's like you don't want us to have the same access because you're enjoying yours and you feel if we come in there, you might not get as much anymore.
So just to try and lay it on thick for the women out there who, or any listener who's, maybe thinking, well, I know it sounds terrible, but, Kwavi has a good life. She's doing great things. How does racism impact her? Can you tell me some examples of how it impacts you on a daily basis?
Well, with my boys, I know that my boys are going to be perceived differently. And that alone that's part of my struggle. My boys will go out there and they're seen as a black teenager. And even my husband, black men are perceived very differently. Like if the cops stop us, my heart is going to be beating fast. Like, oh my goodness, because you hear all these stories. They haven't done anything and they end up getting killed. That is my fear. And like, I don't want to do anything where listen, if I get stopped by the cops, I'll probably be so scared. I just hope I don't say or do the wrong thing. I'm going to be honest with you because all I have are the images of what's happened to people. And I'm like, oh my God. And it doesn't matter if you're male or female because we've seen it. It's happened to females too. So that is my fear. It doesn't matter. I mean, you've heard of people. Look at the guy at Central Park, the issue that happened at Central Park. Yeah. That guy is Harvard educated. So when people say Kwavi it has nothing. Listen, when they see me, they don't know what I've done. They don't know what I've experienced. All they see is a black person.
Do you want to explain the Central Park incident? Just.
Well, no, let them read up about it.
Yeah,
Let's talk more about what we're going to talk. Go read about that. I mean, to be honest with you, that was kind of that was irritating. That's why I don't want. That was just like you weaponizing your whiteness. That was it. That's all I'm going to say about that. That was weaponized. She knew the power she had, and she wielded it.
It was
for
disgusting.
Her own, for her to her advantage. That was just like wrong on so many levels. But you know what? A lot of people are doing that. But let's move on. Whew, that was hard. That was a hard one. That was a difficult one. That was. Yeah. But yeah, so and I bring that up to say that it doesn't matter what I've experienced. It doesn't matter I've traveled. It doesn't matter that my husband's a physician. It has nothing to do with that. All they see is a black person. That's it. That's it.
And now, the press are getting attacked. So if the press are getting attacked, goodness me, what the demonstrators are getting when they try and just exercise their right to free speech.
Their right to free speech. But the thing is, people have to protest. Because without protesting, nothing's going to be done. How do you make your voice heard? How do you let people know that you have a grievance? How do you get people to know that? You protest. That's what people do. I really hope it gets better, but I think for the listeners, non-blacks specifically, educate yourself. This is not an issue that you can just kind of say, okay, it doesn't apply to me, so it doesn't matter. It doesn't apply to you because you're white. So you might not experience what I go through, but it applies to you because you're part of the human race. And it's not enough for you to just sit back. Educate yourself on what's going on. You never know. Your son, your daughter, your friend might marry a black person. And guess what? Their children will go through this. That's the thing. Once you're black, this is your burden to bear. It's just how it is. But it can get better if more white people become more educated about what's going on. Because I think for a while, it's kind of like, oh, you know what? It's their problem. I think that's a lot of people have gone through that. Like, oh, it's their problem. It's our problem. It is our problem. It's universal.
It is universal. And it's also, it's interesting for me reading this book, Me and White Supremacy, and I know that white supremacy is at the root of this issue worldwide, but I've lived in China and I've seen the racism against black people in China, which is even worse.
See, look at that. It's like it's everywhere. It's universal.
Everywhere. It is universal.
It's everywhere.
And what I find so awful is that each race seems to pick on somebody. Well, everybody picks on people who are different to them, don't they? And they don't like people who are different to them. But black people always seem to be at the bottom of the pile.
Yeah, it's like, oh, they feel, okay, you don't matter. We can do this. And then when you have a country like America that has an opportunity to address it and doesn't, it makes it worse. It's like it seems as if it's okay,
Where do we go from here?
I think we all need to do our part. It's a big problem and not one person can solve it, but we can start in our own homes by educating ourselves and educating our children, educating our friends about what's going on. And it's a big issue, and it's not enough to say, because I know a lot of people say, oh, well, all lives matter. Yeah, but all lives don't. But think about that. All lives matter. All lives don't, because black lives don't matter. So all lives really don't matter. And that's the truth. And when I say black lives matter, it doesn't mean that I negate that all lives matter. It's just that historically, black lives haven't mattered. And that's why we have to do this and focus on specifically black lives, because in the past, no one has cared. It's been like, their lives don't matter. These black people, no, that's not good enough anymore. We matter. We we bleed. If I get cut, I'm going to bleed. If you get cut, you're going to bleed. Why does my life have to be less significant than yours? Why? It's hard. It's tough, and when situations like this happen, it brings it to the forefront. And the thing for us, we deal with this daily. It's just that when issues like this happen, it's like brought to the forefront. You even feel the burden gets even heavier to deal with because you see it in front of your eyes. Someone being killed because of their color? Really think about that. This wasn't someone that was put in jail. This was someone that was killed. Life taken just like that. Life taken
on the street.
Someone's child on the street in front of everyone.
I've watched the video. I've watched the compilation of videos that the New York Times did, and it is just quite unbelievable. I just can't get my head around it at all.
It's just... So I think everyone has an obligation to do something. You can do something. And if you don't, that means you're agreeing with what is going on, really. If you don't say anything, that means you agree with it. And I know it's uncomfortable for some of you listening, but that's what the point is. This isn't a comfortable situation. Think about us, black people that have been going through this. It's not comfortable for us. It's not. It has never been. And until there's a change, it never will be. You know what? I really appreciate you giving me this platform to speak up on this topic because it's so important and more people just need to know. And I'm learning because I don't know everything. So I'm learning. That's one of the reasons why I'm reading that book.
But you're living it, aren't you?
Yeah, I'm learning and living it at the same time.
I wish I could do something to help specifically now. I'm learning.
Yeah, but that's it. That's you're taking steps. If everyone takes the steps you're taking, massive action. Yes. That equals massive action. That's it. We all need to take those little steps forward to make a difference. We all need to do that. So hopefully others will, whoever's listening to this, and share it with other people. If even if you share this information with other people so that other people can learn from this. Because I know that other people that want to know what to do but don't know how.
thank you for listening to this episode of the Magnificent Midlife Podcast. If you enjoyed it, please subscribe, share it, and leave me a review wherever you're listening. It really helps me get the message out. You can find out more information about this episode in the show notes at magnificentmidlife.com. That's also where you'll find strategies, support, and resources to help make your midlife magnificent. Get clarity on how to make the most of your next chapter. Help me change the world, one magnificent midlife woman